and dear XLRs. We are honored to welcome Ms. Jayashri Kulkarni, General Manager of Janssen India and South Asia, and the Executive Sponsor of Johnson & Johnson India's DEI Council, to share her valuable insights with us today on the topic Career Jungle Gym. With over 25 years in healthcare, her journey spans across pharmaceuticals, medtech, and healthcare consulting, reflecting a robust portfolio of roles from strategy to commercial leadership. An alumnus of the Institute of Chemical Technology and SP Jain Institute of Management and Research, Ms. Kulkarni couples her extensive experience with a deep commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. She has pioneered the Lighthouse Mentorship Program for Women at J&J India and continues to mentor across various platforms. A patron of the arts, Ms. Kulkarni's passions extend to painting and sketching, mirroring the creativity she brings to her professional endeavors. Please join me in extending her a warm welcome to Ms. Jayashri Kulkarni, a visionary leader and an inspiring change maker. We welcome you, ma'am. In fact, I invite you to say a few words before we proceed with the session formally.
Thank you, Rishikesh, and thank you for having me. I think to see 100+ people here on the call, it's truly very encouraging. I probably am deriving my energy for the entire weekend now, having this interaction. And it's a privilege to be with young professionals, very curious minds. And I'm sure this is going to be a very, very interactive session, which I'll keep on harping on and insisting, because I love conversations and not just a one-way dialogue. Rishikesh, you did a fabulous job of putting together what went through a 25-year journey in healthcare for me. But I think I also want to share with you a few other pieces of what makes me who I am. So I've been brought up in a small town called Khopoli. I don't know if anybody of you is familiar with this town, which is on the way to Pune. In those days, it was known for its beautiful scenic waterfall and a lot of industrial setups that were there. And I have seen my parents actually start their whole life, and my father in particular actually start from the most basic of positions all the way growing and working towards being the plant head. And I think my principles of ethics, my principles of what is doing right and what is wrong have been strongly influenced by him. When I have seen him work in good times and bad times, including in those days a concept called as unions of workers that had a lot of influence on how manufacturing units worked, participated, and thrived. So I think I had a very strong, foundation that got built in this particular life. And then the whole aspiration around what can I do for healthcare was something that got triggered through a very personal experience where, unfortunately, we had a loss of a family member. And it triggered this whole passion around saying, how can I be a part of healthcare in whichever form, in whatever form, and then influence or shape how healthcare is brought to patients in India. And I think those two, apart from what Rishikesh just mentioned, form a very, very big part of who I am and how I have evolved, and how I continue to be extremely passionate about healthcare and also about India and what we can do in India. Added to that, a lot of other nuances came in, but I want to highlight one more is the kind of role models I saw in the family of women really going ahead outside of the house and working out to be independent professionals. So early on, I had the fortune of having role model of my grand aunt, who in her 50s, in 1950s in India, was a gynecologist. I had, my dad's cousins who were professors and, holding teaching jobs. So I think then the role model piece of seeing women out there as professionals has also kind of stayed with me, which is why you see me being an executive sponsor of DEI and being extremely, extremely intentional about saying, not just about ensuring that there is an environment that encourages women to participate, but also a safe environment that allows for people to be themselves, bring their ideas into the conversations and ensure that everybody's voice is heard. So therefore, strong ethics, having a very big and strong passion for healthcare, And being very mindful about inclusion is something that I also carry with me, and I'm extremely, how would I say, vocal about it in any and every conversation. So to add to the 25 plus years of experience in healthcare, I think these are three things that I would want to share with all of you. And I hope they resonate with many of you, because I'm sure there are similar stories here where parents have probably invested some of their savings to get you all here, or some of you here, or there are role models that have pushed you to say, hey, I need to do something different as well, whether it is in HR or any other, function of professions. So Rishikesh, that was something that I wanted to add before we get on with the main session.
Absolutely. It's great to hear from you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for sharing that wonderful introduction and also for sharing your beautiful life journey. And it was beautiful as well as truly inspirational, I would say. And I welcome you once again. And I also thank all of you for joining today's discussion on the Career Jungle Gym. For those who may not be familiar, including myself until recently, the term was coined by Sheryl Sandberg, the former CEO of Facebook. Nowadays, it is not about career ladder, it is about career jungle gym. It's not about building your resume, it's about building skills. It is about challenging the conventional career ladder. The concept of jungle gym careers is about the non linear path to professional success, emphasizing flexibility and adaptability. Today, we unravel the layers of this metaphor, exploring how it encourages adaptability and skill diversification. So, let's embark on this journey together and delve into the dynamics of Career Jungle Gym. Now, let's pass the virtual mic over to my dear friend Rishikesh to kick off our exploration of the Career Jungle Gym with our esteemed guest, Jayashri Kulkarni.
Thanks. Thanks, Shatakshi. As we start with the first question, I guess it's
May I interrupt? I would
absolutely,
love for you to call me Jayashri. Please avoid ma'am. I think in today's age, it's much more comfortable. I'll feel very uncomfortable if you all call me ma'am.
absolutely. Thank you, Jayashri. So the first question is with regards to your with regards to strategy. Actually, as a country head, you would find strategic planning as essential to the business process, but you also have experience in hands-on roles. So how do you strike a balance between strategic oversight and hands-on involvement in your career? And how does this help prepare for our own careers in terms of skills and experiences, maybe?
Hmm. Um, I think I'll also add another layer of um, leadership into this, because a lot of what you just asked also is affected by the leadership that you want to bring into an organization. And why do I say that? Many of us, or most of us, will start off with a hands-on experience roles, right? Where we are individual contributors and we are bringing our expertise, so to say, in the function that we belong to. And over our journey, we hope to have layers added to it, whether it is across functions or whether it is going and moving into people leadership roles. And I think as you do that, there are two nuances that I want to talk about. Number one is how do you ensure that you're providing the strategy and the vision for a team, and how do you balance when are you going to zoom in and say, hey, let me participate and work with you. And the other extreme could be you've given the insight and you're letting them be and giving them the space and the enablers where they can learn and implement. And I think as a leader, understanding this nuance becomes important, but also as a team member, recognizing this and being very vocal about saying, hey, I need the team lead support, or I need the collaboration of my other fellow participants, becomes very important for you to communicate, to make sure that there is balance, that there is no micromanagement. There is also, not the disadvantage of or risk of being so close to a project that you do not tend to move out and say, what does it do from a longer term perspective as well? So as a leader, therefore, you become that person who is keeping the team honest in terms of saying, yes, we need to break down the task into problems and activities that need to be delivered every day or every week or every month, but also keeping them very, very focused on what does that really achieve. And I think bringing that balance becomes extremely important, because I can be honest, in a lot of my career early on, the projects were all medium to long term, which meant that there was at least about 3 years or 5 years till I could see objectives being met. And then when you move to a business leader role, you actually are looking at deliveries every day, right? And therefore, being able to balance that longer term, medium term vision with saying, hey, but I need to deliver on these tasks today, and I need to deliver on tasks in this week for that objective to be achieved, that appreciation becomes extremely important. So being able to think 3 year window, being able to think 1 week window, and being able to balance that becomes extremely important. And I think the same goes across functions. What makes it even more complex today is the fact that the environment is changing so fast and so dynamically that that medium and long term strategic oversight or strategic thought process that you want to have is suddenly shrinking in terms of the period also, right? Or it needs that ability for us to pivot and change because the environment is changing. So that's one way to look at it. The other is the actual experience. So I think having a hands-on experience in a particular function has definitely helped me in my role. And I can give you the current example where I'm heading the country. Having done strategic planning, large projects that looked at diversification, definitely bring in a lot more understanding probably, and an early ramp up to how do you look at a problem from various aspects, how do you look at scenarios that need to be built, and then provide direction as and how is required. So I think that knowledge piece that the core experience brings from being this head of strategy, or being part of a project that is looking at setting up a hospital or a manufacturing plant, definitely brings a lot of perspective for you to be able to build the vision. So I think as you all plan your careers, making sure that there is some element of hands-on experience to a few areas definitely will give an advantage. And it's an obvious thing, right? Most of us would want to balance that versus saying, hey, I need to straight away jump into a strategy role. The appreciation and the nuances and the details definitely go a long way. And I see that happening every day.
Thank you, ma'am. That is definitely an interesting way to look at things, focusing on leadership and not just on strategizing the business. And this definitely brings a new perspective home. And furthermore, as we have learned that, one of the key elements in the career jungle gym, it's about embracing change. And you rightly pointed out before this. So, can you share a situation where you actively sought out a learning opportunity, even if it meant stepping into unfamiliar territory?
Most recent example I can give you, which is actually taking on the role of the country head, right? So having done work in strategy, in consulting, in business development, business insights, moving careers and pivoting to become a business leader was probably an area which made me most uncomfortable. Because here I was wanting to lead a large business and therefore be responsible to deliver day on day and month on month, grow it, build a strategy for it, get people to be inspired by that vision, um, build followership of the team so that they are inspired by the vision and also want to be a part of that vision. And constantly, while doing this, also go ahead and advocate India and the opportunity India has to the region and the global teams. Things that I had done, but definitely leading large teams, inspiring them, getting followership was something that I did not have the experience with. And I think it was one of the biggest pivots for me, and possibly one of the biggest assignments that I've seen amazing amount of learning that has happened. And it kind of reinforces something that I heard from Simon Sinek. I don't know how many of you follow him or hear him, but he said, if you know people, you know business. I think it kind of drove home a lot of things that he said during that 5-10 minute talk that he does about knowing people and therefore knowing business in this whole pivot that I had. So extremely uncomfortable answering business review questions, saying why has the number not been done or what's the variable that's come into the market suddenly, but then also understanding what really matters the most when it comes to your team and how do you engage them and inspire them to go ahead and deliver. And I think some of the learnings there for me was that it's okay to share that I don't know things. It's absolutely okay to ask for help from functional experts. Um, it's also very important to ask the right questions all the time, and also encourage people to say it's okay to ask questions. Um, the other piece that I learned there was also around how do you encourage people to share their failures, but more in terms of learnings. What did they learn from it, and what can we inculcate from that into the future projects or assignments or tasks that we do? So yeah, this journey from being a strategy lead to a business leader, a commercial leader that is taking 1,000+ people along a journey which says, hey, I want to be the fastest growing multinational in the pharmaceutical industry. I want to be the fastest growing market for J&J. And I want to make sure that we launch 1 or 2 molecules every year was a tall order. And it was something that was not up my sleeve, despite having 20 years of experience then. But it was definitely one of the most, or is one of the most enriching experience I have had.
Thank you, ma'am. That is definitely enlightening, I would say, and adding new perspectives to our discussion. But apart from that, would you highlight any specific mindsets or strategies that you would recommend to us young professionals? How, because we are also navigating through our own career jungle gym.
Can you elaborate more, Shatakshi, on what would you want to?
I mean, I know you have outrightly already you have specified many things that we should focus on people and we should ask for help and it's okay to ask questions. But any specific mindset that you think we should take ahead with us when we go out of this college and we embrace on our own journey to be better leaders for the nation and as well for the company?
Um, I know you come from an institute where probably the inclination is to stay in the HR function. Is that correct?
Some of us are aiming for the HR, but it's a mix of other roles as well.
Roles as well. Fantastic. I think for me, 2 pieces that I would want you to focus on. One is start talking about or start thinking about the purpose part. And why I say that, and it might sound a little fuzzy to many of you, why is Jayashri giving Gyan on purpose? I don't know, how do I put it together? But that anchor on what is going to make you want to get up every day and go to work becomes very important, and build on it. For me, it started with healthcare, but then there are so many other pieces that got added onto it. So how do you sit and build that purpose? And it could be a very simple one, saying, I love working with people, or I'm a technology fan and I want to make sure that there is disruption there. It could be simple little objectives that you set up. So I think being able to set that purpose up becomes extremely important for young professionals. If that's there, it's like a North Star for you. Do not make career plans saying in 5 years I want to be this, or 7 years I want to be that, because the truth is the environment changes every 2 to 3 years now. So what you may have planned today, you might actually be looking at something extremely different in the next 3 to 5 years. I myself can tell you that, right? I'm an individual who did not know internet existed till probably when I was in early high school. Not seen e-commerce, not seen mobile communications, not seen digital and minimal invasive surgery in healthcare. So many of these disruptors have come when I started my career. And I could have easily said, hey, I want to be a sales representative in a pharmaceutical company. That's the career I want to be. So I think the second part is, how do you be very curious and be very intentional of looking at what are the trends that are going to change, in the industry that you want to be in the function that you want to be in, and how do you start continuously building your learning. That is something that as young individuals you should not stop. This whole aspect of making sure you're generating insights from multiple how would I say sources, to make sure that you appreciate, you're able to connect the dots of what the transformation is and how is it happening and at what pace for you to be able to making decisions. My entire career has not been planned. I'll be very honest. It was because people reached out to me and they said, hey, this is an assignment that I have, and I found learning opportunity there. I found an opportunity to create an impact. And I also realized that this is not a job that many people are putting their hand up for. So it has happened by chance, but it has given me absolutely amazing opportunities to grow as a person. And therefore, my appeal to you is A1, build on your purpose, start writing your purpose from today. Put in nuances of what you love, what you would want to be known for, what your personal brand needs to be, whatever it is, start in some form. And second is keep on exploring what trends and how the environment is evolving for you to say, okay, where is it that I want to create an impact? Assignments and conversations and career opportunities will unfold by themselves anyways. So those are the two things, Shatakshi, I think I would say in addition to what I shared earlier.
Thank you, ma'am. So as we take it to the next topic, actually, this is something that is very close to our hearts and something very relevant right now. So Johnson & Johnson is one of the most admired companies in the world, and even think about a year back, Forbes recognized it as a top player in the pharma and healthcare sector, a large part of which could be attributed to its ability to innovate and commit to solving some of the largest challenges the world faces in this domain, particularly through verticals such as Janssen, which help provide pharmaceutical solutions to some of the most problematic diseases that plague the world. So, how do you foster a culture of innovation within your team, especially in an environment with complex regulation and high stakes? So, can you share specific examples of ideas that emerged from your team? Particularly since as the head of DEI, how would you say this also sort of fits into innovation? How can we can use this to contribute further towards that goal?
Yeah, so I think one thing which I've done in the past 4 years is ensure that there are many opportunities for people to come together, brainstorm on opportunities on a very ongoing basis. And they have been across functions, they have been across business problems, they have been across how we present ourselves in the market as well. And the main objective of doing that was not about talking about success later on, but really what have we learned from the failures. And I think I talked about this earlier as well. There is a very strong intentional session that's kept in terms of saying what did we learn from this project, whether it was successful, but if it was a failure, then even more important that what did we learn from it. And I think while doing those and discussing failures or discussing learnings, there have been many important insights that have come to us that have helped us say, okay, this is what we want to do differently. Many a times innovation is looked at from the lens of, in healthcare at least, from products, from services, and from the portfolio. And I think bringing an understanding that innovation goes beyond that and can be in any element of how we do business has really helped people to come up with ideas. So these instances where we were looking at encouraging conversations, brainstorming, competitions, being able to present in front of senior leadership actually drove people to start thinking, okay, what can I share with with the team on something innovative that we can do. And I think over the past 2 to 3 years, we have seen innovation, or I would say creativity, not just in terms of the products that we have put our hand up as India to bring in, but also in how we have gone ahead and piloted go-to-market models to promote and engage in the market, how we have gone ahead and partnered with companies that complement our portfolio in a way that it unlocks the whole patient journey, how we have gone ahead and also looked at women in sales and said creatively, what do we want to do to ensure that more women start entering the workforce. So these are some of the examples I can give. but I think it started or it got triggered because there was a very structured, planned effort that went into saying, how do we brainstorm? How do we sit on a regular basis and look at business? Even if we are the fastest growing market for J&J, what more can we do? And that has manifested, like I said, through initiatives, and it has also manifested through very innovative ideas that the team came through saying, how do we build something called as a spirit of Janssen, which is getting the teams together and saying, how do we be accountable for and be one team that is looking at this objective. So opportunity to present your ideas to senior leadership, competitive brainstorming, tracks, or even stretch assignments. All of these have actually contributed to some of the work that is already in the market, whether it is working on precision medicine, whether it is piloting sales team for structures, or looking at women in sales as well.
Thanks. That was a very comprehensive answer. So actually taking the next question from sort of the previous answer itself, you mentioned give particular emphasis to partnerships which complement your portfolio.
Mm-hmm.
So in your previous BD roles, how do you identify and evaluate such potential partnerships and alliances in the healthcare sector? And if you have any specific examples of innovative and how do you measure the success of these ideas, rather these partnerships?
I think a lot of it also anchors on what the objective or the strategy for that organization is, right? What does it want to do in a particular market? Is it an objective that says, I want to unlock and make the patient journey very streamlined? Or is it to say, I want to make sure that I am known as the organization that can bring a product to commercialization is in the most impactful way and create top line. So it all goes back to what objective are you setting up as an organization that then trickles down to business development or any other function for that matter, saying, okay, now let's see how we can contribute to this objective. And I think in previous roles, the objective that we started with saying is, how do we make the organization relevant in the Indian market by participating in therapy areas that make the most sense for the Indian patient, and make sure that we are creating a portfolio that is therefore suitable for the therapy areas, but also create capability in our team such that the messaging, the engagement ensures that there is responsible prescription of these medications in the market. And that triggered then activities across functions. And in BD, it meant that I was looking at portfolios, I was looking at products that made the most sense from the kind of patient pool, the kind of treatment pathway that we had, and then what we could do in terms of certain therapy areas where we had knowledge in. So it cascaded from the company's objective to then activities and tasks that the business development team worked on, and then went back into terms of saying, what does this opportunity really mean for us from multiple lenses, not just the financial returns, but its fitment to the objective that we had set. And also, what is it doing for the company as a brand, and what is it doing for the company's equity in the market? One other interesting piece it did for us was also that by going through this whole channel, and many of you might say, hey, does BD really look at this? But what is the kind of job creation this is going to do for us? Whether it is in terms of the broader impact in the country, or the SMEs that we will have to deploy and partner with, or the kind of education that we would have to do to HCPs in order to use these products, right? So a lot of these additional adjacent objectives also started making more sense as we started looking at the portfolio. So what started with the vision to what a function can do actually connected it back to a lot of other implications that we had to keep in mind. And interestingly, I think that those kind of discussions which ensure that the business development function not only works on it as a key project lead, but gets other enabling functions to come and say and weigh in saying, how do you do this? made it even more impactful. It also allowed for the enabling functions in the organization as a whole to sign off on it because they're so involved and invested in the decision and see the benefits, versus what would typically happen in a BD, where you would bring in your business case and proposal, bring it to senior leadership, recommend, get the chance to present it, get recommendations, and then keep working on it and negotiate. So I think by making it a lot more inclusive in terms of looking at the impact it can create beyond top line and fitment to the objective is something that was for me very, very rewarding.
Thank you, ma'am. Actually, it is about balancing and looking things with multiple lenses and trying out new ideas at the end. So, your career spans across various sectors in healthcare. Looking ahead, what are your predictions for the future of healthcare? What emerging technologies or trends do you see having the most significant impact in the coming years? And how can businesses prepare for them?
I think if at all anything, healthcare is probably going to see a very unprecedented, I would say, impact from multiple other industry segments as well. Technology being the biggest contributor there. And if I anchor everything that's happening in healthcare on one fundamental, which is the human genome getting sequenced and we knowing the entirety what the human genome is, it is creating advancements and disruptions in three broad areas. And that's how I simplify everything that's happening. One is it is making therapy and it is making what we do in healthcare extremely personalized. So personalization. The second is it is helping us predict, uh, you know, health related issues in a far more precise manner. So predictability is something that you would see as a big disruptor, and already seeing a lot of that in terms of how risk factors are being looked at through biomarkers and so on. And the third is preventive. So while we know preventive from our lens as vaccines, I think beyond vaccines, there is so much more that we are going to be looking at, which say preventive health becomes, very important. So the millions of things that are happening in healthcare, if you have to kind of consolidate all of those, it comes to being personalization, predictive, and preventive. These would be the three parameters on which any and every disruption, innovation, discovery is going to be anchored on. And if you want to bring in the elements of how other industries are going to shape it, then I would say convergence becomes the biggest one. So technology and pharmaceuticals and medtech is going to see a lot of convergence, combinations that are already in market, but probably would go many-fold. What it is going to do to something like supply chain is already being seen when we look at technologies like CAR-T, which is your own cells, T cells getting re-engineered and re-injected into you after having gone through certain processing outside of your body, and actually strengthening your own immune system to fight diseases like cancer. And it has applications beyond cancer as well, which means that I'm going to be I'm going to extract your own plasma cells, transport them to a processing facility, and bring them back and inject them into your body. And that is going to disrupt supply chain majorly, because from your traditional manufacturing hubs, you're suddenly going to be looking at closer to the patient kind of processing capabilities. You're going to need a lot more complex and sophisticated logistics that allow for safe transportation in the kind of environment that you need. So that convergence and the complexity would be things that I would say. And I could go on and on, but keep it simple in terms of personalized, predictive, preventive, from where healthcare is heading, convergence across multiple areas, and then the increased complexity.
Thank you. That was a very insightful answer. And it makes a nice short acronym, the three Ps,
Yeah.
for us management students. So
True.
the next question I have, actually, I guess, sort of merges into the previous one. Yeah. Data analytics is one of the skills that you've honed over your career. So how do you see data analytics, and how have you used it in making career-related decisions? And do you see it as a crucial tool or as a useful tool in navigating the career jungle gym?
It is. I think you would have heard people calling data the new oil also, right? It's not a new nomenclature, and I think it becomes so much more important in terms of how we view it. For me, because I've been in consulting, because I've worked in business insights and analytics, I think it has brought in a very different appreciation of what data can do for you. And the way I see it clearly for myself is brings in a lot of objectivity in terms of differentiating between what is a noise and what is a true insight. What is an anecdote and what is an emerging common phenomena that I see across multiple areas, right? Number one. Number two, it has brought in a lot of rigor in terms of scenario building. And this is a capability that I think I would urge you to look at much more seriously, of how do you ensure that you are looking at multiple scenarios that can unfold in an environment that's so variable and so changing, and how do you use data to be able to answer or find solutions for it. In terms of decisions on career, I think I have always used data to be able to say, what is the key driver of success in the new assignment that I'm going to be doing? What can I contribute to it? And if I have to create a roadmap, how is the data helping me when I'm giving an interview? Say 1 year down the line, I'm sitting as this person who has taken up this role, and this is the performance review I'm giving. And here are the success matrices that I'm going to talk about. So imagine sitting for an interview with J&J, any one of you, and you've been brought on roles to be, I'm just making this up, a market access lead. And I think having that discipline of using insights and analytics should be able to help you envision what the role really needs. And then saying, okay, year 2025, I'm sitting with my manager, and these are the 5 things that I'm going to say are done, checked, created the impact, and this is what it results from a patient perspective and top line perspective. So being able to do that with information, with insights, and the ability to connect dots is something that I've used very, very meaningfully. It's helped me multiple times. And it's something that I would want everybody to appreciate, not just from looking at it as analytics means number crunching, but really saying, how do I differentiate noise from insight? How do I start looking at the practice of building scenarios? And that becomes a broader definition of analytics and insights for everybody.
Thank you, ma'am. That is really fascinating. Especially, I think it would be for the data enthusiasts in the audience. And I also loved your 3 Ps. But other than that, I think that customer needs, they are very vital, that we should understand those. So my question to you is, how do you approach gathering and utilizing customer insights to inform business strategies, especially in the healthcare industry, where customer preferences can be diverse and rapidly evolving?
Yeah, I think this is one thing that probably even senior leaders in J&J have kind of walked the talk, so it makes it very easy for us, is how do you stay focused on customers? And to me, it's fascinating that while there are traditional tools of research and insight, which have structure and a questionnaire, and you go ahead and interact. But for me, the 7 days a month that you can spend on the field interacting with your team and with your customers is probably the most valuable way of gaining insights. And what we're trying to inculcate and what we've done successfully is being able to ensure that in our GNOs for the senior leadership, there is dedicated time that is put on our goals, saying we will be going and meeting our customers. And our customers need not just be the HCPs. They can be government stakeholders, they can be suppliers, they can be distributors, they can be the retail chemist. I think there's a broader cohort of stakeholders that we need insights from, right? So being very, very structured in terms of how you interact with them, um, uh, on a regular basis is one thing that I have always encouraged, and we ensure that we do. In addition to that, I think there is also a very structured way in which we are bringing external perspectives very regularly into our conversations. So one of the examples is this year, we're going to have every 3 months an external expert coming in and talking to leadership about what market trends, should we be looking at from a short term and a longer term horizon. And that's where customer insights will come in as well for us. Of course, there is multiple other ways in which you get insights, right? When you're doing a brainstorming session and you're expecting people to start thinking about new things and experimenting and piloting, by default, there is a need for, insight generation or talking to customers and saying what do they really want. Apart from all of this, I think what has also helped is every Friday I set aside about an hour. So actually this 4:30 to 5:30 is a slot that I keep aside where I reflect on every conversation that has happened or every podcast I have heard or every article that I have read during that week, which is giving me some insight or the other. And that has also probably helped in how we look at business or how I look at business. So one is talking to your direct customers on a very regular basis, making sure you're getting external perspectives into meetings and discussions in a very structured manner, reflecting on what you've read, but also looking to multiple other industries for inspiration becomes extremely important. And I'll give you an example. If you look at the supply chain or the logistics in pharmaceuticals, it probably has a lot of catch up to do versus when you look at a consumer industry or when you look at the new benchmark that many of the e-commerce platforms have set up, right? Click of the app, you know where your product is, when is it going to be delivered, and what time should you expect it? What's the OTP which manages the security of? Do we see that kind of visibility for farm? Probably not. But then taking inspiration and saying, how do I bring this? How do I bring more visibility and understanding? And there are elements that many of the logistics suppliers are trying to bring as solutions, but going to other industries and seeking inspiration and not just your own customers is also something that we want to do, and we do also as an organization. So yeah, it's multiple platforms of intentional engagement, Shatakshi, that extremely important for us to do and build on cross-industry inspiration. One interesting insight that I also want to leave with you is I know of this subject matter expert that we had brought in some time back to just challenge us on how we're thinking resilient and how do we stay focused on bringing exponential growth year on year. And she had done a very good experiment where she'd gotten young children into a leadership meeting. And they ranged from probably middle school, high school to maybe undergrad level children, teens, into the conversation. Same questions that board members were asked to these people. And the kind of insights that got generated and how they looked at problems, it was amazing to see the learning that you get. So, I mean, insights can come from most surprising and least expected zones, but the ability to say, have that willingness to be open and try those becomes extremely important versus saying, okay, let's do a focus group, let's do a structured primary research or a secondary research. Beyond that, what do we need to do?
Thank you, ma'am. That was really insightful. And as I would say, it's really innovative too. None of us would think bringing children to board meetings. So that's, yeah.
Not
And
that I have done it yet in J&J, but I would love to someday for sure.
definitely, ma'am. And also, thank you for lending us your 1 hour slot for today. And now I would open the room for discussion, for the questions. And now other students can ask the questions. Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Can I go ahead? Hi, Jayashri. Thanks for the lovely talk. I myself come from the pharma background. I was previously associated with Novartis. And like you said, I can see that matrix development in terms of hierarchy, the organization, how it's changing. But my question to you is, are the hiring requirements changing according to the changing business requirements? Because from my experience, yes, I have seen a gradual change in the way the jobs are defined. Even while I was working as a scientist, I saw that my work would not just be of, the testing that involved. We would also be involved in a lot of digital transformation projects or other learning and development projects as well. So is there like a conscious effort done in the change in the type of hiring that we are doing? How's the hiring landscape in terms of in the healthcare?
It is. And I think from the traditional hiring philosophy, where you would want to look at prior experience, where you want to look at fitment into an organization, at a broader level, there probably is more appreciation in terms of saying, is this person bringing the competency and capability that I want? What do I mean by that? How does this person look at problem solving? How does this person behave in an ambiguous situation? How does this person work in an extremely uncomfortable environment that I'm putting her in? So I think the hiring philosophy is changing from looking at past experience and past capabilities to things that we need in an organization. And how does that manifest into hiring decisions? I think there is a conscious effort that even we as an organization do in terms of familiarizing young professionals of what different career paths can be, right? So it's not the traditional sales and marketing, but today for any healthcare company, having a very strong market access capability, having a very strong medical affairs capability, having a very strong techno-commercial capability becomes important. And there are so many new, therefore, functions that get coined in terms of saying this is where we need people who can connect, interact, understand, bring back insights, and facilitate. Nobody was thinking about precision medicine about 5, 6 years back, right? But now when you're talking about something like precision medicine, where you need to work closely with diagnostic companies and ensure that the patient profiling is done in such detail that you're able to say, okay, of the different, at least 108 different gene mutations, there are these 3 that we can identify for which there is a medication that I have that I can provide. So it's a very different kind of landscape that's evolving. And you're absolutely right. I think we need more younger professionals that are willing to move across functions, that are willing to think more from what they bring as a capability versus domain knowledge and domain experience. And I have seen, people who are PhDs in Pharm Chem actually doing a fantastic job on the field, engaging in value discussions with government stakeholders. No connection at all to the R&D work that they were doing, but being able to do it because their ability to generate insights from the conversation and then go back with very fundamental talking points is extremely high. I have seen public health experts coming in and being able to launch molecules with partnership with a diagnostic company also very differently. So yeah, it's evolving, and I think we need more dialogue and more success stories to be able to say to people that farm is not just about these things, but it's evolving into very different roles and scenarios for people to flourish.
Yeah.
But I'm glad you asked this question. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and just to follow up, maybe because, and I've observed this because we worked with teams like that, is that when we bring in people who are not from the same background, for example, we are all pharma graduates over there, but we were facing a typical problem with a transport of a certain a cryogenic set of medicines, and our lot was always failing. So we brought in a supply chain expert from FMCG, and he helped us actually craft a different perspective. And that's how we realized that, maybe we should like mix up a bit. So are we seeing that sort of change happening across in Janssen as well?
Absolutely.
Like, yeah.
We do. And I think one of the things that is a mandate from me is for people to not, and I can take the example of sales, right? It's very easy for somebody to say, I need somebody someone in the oncology team, let me look at all the possible oncology sales, experts out there and start picking up from them. And my challenge to them is, okay, how can we bring, an operational research expert into this? Exactly to your point, in oncology, it's becoming so complex in terms of how you bring the product when it is required to the hospital for the patient. There's a very different perspective from the OR specialist that can come in, right? So how do you bring that newness in thinking becomes important. But I think, Poonam, the challenge is also for the younger professionals to have mindsets that say, it's okay for me to have trained and educated in a particular area, and it's absolutely fine to do something completely different. Number one. And number two, for people also to be patient when such experiments are being done, to allow and facilitate for that person to be successful. So I think it'll go both ways. Companies will love to create that environment, but also individuals will need to say, I'm okay experimenting across functions versus being very fixated to a certain career path. And it's just why this jungle gym concept becomes something that is so critical in the current context.
Thank you, Pran. Yeah.
You can go ahead, Tushar.
Thanks, Rishikesh. Hi, ma'am. Good evening. Welcome to Excel, and thank you for this session. It was really a lot of new insights which we got today. So thank you for that. My question to you is, sometimes I assume that, in a decade or two, when technology and regulations co-develop together, and all with the ethical and the equitable standards. So, as a leader of today, foresight how do you foresight it, or you have as a vision, and what expectation do you have from the other leaders for this future? Thank you.
I think I'll build on what Poonam and I were talking about earlier, is how do you make sure that there is appreciation to the interconnections and the convergence that I talked about in terms of future of health, right? And if I take the technology track, a very candid conversation with an oncologist led us to say, okay, will our jobs become redundant in 3 years? That's the kind of, predictions people are making, that will you need doctors, for example, beyond a certain point if there is technology? And then you have conversations with, people who are building policies in terms of saying what changes and transformations are you seeing or expecting that we need to be mindful of and bring the governance together. So I think the vision that I would have is, while we're going on the path of transformation and discovery and seeing convergence and integration of unrelated industries coming together, how do we make it our responsibility to create that awareness of these transformations with the governing and the regulatory authorities as well, and educate them and take them along on this journey to be able to say, hey, here is the next pivot that's going to come in. How are we prepared in terms of regulating or governing it? So while there will be internal company teams that look at risk, that look at, what does this do to the company or the patient or the people, but there is also this inclusion of governance and regulatory bodies that can make the dialogue very interesting and very important. And to I think the most important piece today that comes up is around conversation of, when we talk about cell and gene therapy, when we talk about your own cells getting processed, are we ready as a country to be able to provide the requisite approvals, but also the requisite guardrails that say, this is what we will play in. And if we move from here, it's not about the penalty to the organization, but the risk it creates for the patients. And how do you focus on minimizing or limiting that risk? So that journey being made together becomes extremely important, which is why you would also see a lot of leaders and leading companies engaging with the regulatory authorities in terms of saying, this is what we see in future and this is what we need to do.
Thank you, ma'am. But I'm sure that must be really difficult conversations.
You'll be surprised it is not. I think there is a lot of willingness that I see for people to understand innovation. And I think it is triggered with the fact that there is so much of intent for India to change its perception from someone who is a pharmacy manufacturing hub to somebody who's doing innovation also. And therefore, the kind of small little steps that are coming through are very, very encouraging, I would say. Whether it is the sector skills that are getting created that will consciously start looking at how we are educating to some of the policies and changes. But yes, the pace at which it will go will be something that you will need to battle and constantly work on. So it's not going to be a 3-year or a 4-year horizon and suddenly there will be a button that gets switched and we're all ready. But it is going to be a journey of evolution as well.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, everyone. As we approach the end of the session, I want to express my gratitude to Jayashri Kulkarni for dedicating her time to share the invaluable insights she has accumulated throughout her extensive and distinguished career. Specifically, her perspectives on striking a balance between short and long term goals, normalizing the act of seeking help and asking questions in times of uncertainty, and above all, embracing calculated risks and drawing inspiration from challenges and role models to contribute to making the world a better place. We loved your interesting examples and stories that you provided within the conversation, which was truly intriguing and fascinating. Jayashri, thank you for fostering an interactive and engaging session. I, on behalf of my friends, wish you all the very best for your future and that you continue to contribute through your skills and experience. Thank you, Jayashri.
Thank you so much, Satakshi. Thank you again for having me. I love the questions and absolutely happy to stay connected if there are any more queries or if there is any more questions on healthcare.
Absolutely, we'll
Have
forward with you.
a great weekend, everybody.
You too, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You too, Jayashri. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.